Ever catch yourself bending over backward for someone's approval, scrambling to be the chosen one in a group chat, a relationship, or even at work, molding yourself into whatever you think will earn that tiny hit of validation? That desperate need to be seen, to be picked, it's exhausting, isn't it? And deep down, it feels hollow, because no matter how many times you adjust your personality, your boundaries, or your values to fit someone else's expectations, that craving for external approval never really gets filled. This isn't just about romantic relationships or friendships. It's a mindset, a reflex that seeps into every corner of your life, leaving you feeling powerless and drained. But what if there was a way to silence that needy voice inside? A way to stand firm in your worth, not because someone else finally noticed it, but because you know it unshakably. That's where Stoicism comes in. This ancient philosophy isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending you don't care. It's about reclaiming your power by realizing where your control actually lies, not in others' opinions, but in your own choices, your own perspective, your own integrity. Stoicism teaches you to stop begging for crumbs of attention and start feasting on self-respect. And in this video, we're diving into 25 Stoic philosophies that will systematically dismantle that pick-me energy, replacing it with unshakable confidence. Imagine walking into a room and not scanning for approval. Imagine saying no without guilt or yes without ulterior motives. Imagine being so grounded in your own worth that you stop morphing yourself into whatever you think will win love or validation. That's freedom. This isn't about becoming cold or detached, it's about becoming aligned. Stoicism doesn't tell you to stop caring, it teaches you to care deeply but wisely. To invest your energy where it matters, in the things you can actually influence, your actions, your reactions, your growth. The rest, let it go. Over the next minutes, we'll unpack principles that have guided emperors, artists, and everyday people for centuries, tools to help you stop seeking permission to exist and start owning your space in the world. By the end, you won't just understand these ideas intellectually, you'll feel them, because the antidote to pick-me energy isn't another self-help trend. It's timeless wisdom that reminds you you're already enough. Now let's begin. The first Stoic philosophy that flips the script on pick-me energy is also the most fundamental. Focus only on what you can control. 2,000 years ago, the philosopher Epictetus drew a line in the sand, one that separates everything in life into two categories. On one side, the things we can't control, other people's opinions, whether they like us, how they respond to us. On the other, the things we can, our own actions, our choices, the standards we hold ourselves to. Every time you twist yourself into knots trying to win someone's approval, you're pouring energy into the wrong side of that line. Think about it. How much time have you spent rehearsing texts to seem funnier, quieter, or more agreeable? Obsessing over why someone left you on read or didn't invite you to that event. That's your life force leaking into the uncontrollable. Here's the irony. Pick-me energy isn't just about wanting love, it's about outsourcing your worth. You hand the keys to your self-esteem to strangers, co-workers, or partners, then panic when they treat it carelessly. Social media turns this into a numbers game. Likes, follows, comments becoming this external scoreboard where you're always losing because the game is rigged. But Stoicism flips that. Imagine two versions of you, one who posts a photo and refreshes every 30 seconds, stomach sinking with every minute that passes without enough likes. The other posts it, closes the app, and moves on with their day. Not because they don't care, but because their joy isn't currency waiting to be validated by others. That's the shift. The Stoics didn't say this would be easy. They called it training because rewiring a lifetime of people-pleasing takes practice. Start small. Next time you feel that familiar itch to adjust yourself for approval, pause. Ask, is this within my control? If the answer's no, redirect that energy inward. Did you act with integrity? Were you kind without ulterior motives? Did you try your best? Those are your virtues. That's where your power lies, approval. That's just weather. It comes and goes, but your character, that's the ground beneath your feet. Stand there, and here's the secret no one tells you. When you stop chasing approval, you start attracting respect. Not the performative kind, but the real kind, from yourself first, then from others, because people can smell desperation, but they can also sense when someone's unshakable. That's the paradox. The less you need to be picked, the more you stand out, not for being what others want, but for being who you are. So next time you catch yourself bending for a date, a boss, a follower count, remember Epictetus' line. Cross back over to your side, the side where your worth isn't a question waiting for someone else's answer. It's a fact, and no external validation can change that. Now let's take this philosophy off the page and into your life with some hands-on exercises, because knowing the difference between what you can and can't control is one thing, living it is another. Start with this journal prompt. Today, where did I hand over my peace to someone else's choices? Maybe you agonized over a friend's vague text response, or you changed your outfit 3 times before a date, second-guessing what they'd find attractive. Write it down, then next to each scenario, draw 2 columns, my zone and their zone. In my zone, list the choices you actually had, your response, your boundaries, your self-talk. In their zone, list everything that wasn't yours to decide their tone, their attraction, their mood. Seeing it on paper makes the imbalance obvious. That frantic energy you poured into their zone, that's your self-worth leaking out. Now for the role play. Pick a recent moment where you felt that sticky, pick-me desperation creep in. Maybe you laughed too loud at a joke that wasn't funny to fit in, or you withheld your true opinion to avoid conflict. Replay the scene in your head, but this time edit it with a Stoic lens. Instead of clinging to the outcome, do they like me? Anchor yourself in what you control. Did I show up authentically? Did I respect my own values? Feel the shift. That's detachment in action, not apathy, but clarity. You're no longer a leaf blown by the wind of others' opinions. You're the tree rooted in your own soil. Here's a harder exercise. Practice planned rejection. Send that risky text you've been over-editing. Wear the outfit that feels like you even if it's not trending. Voice the unpopular but honest take in a meeting. Do it with zero attachment to the response. The goal isn't to get a certain reaction. It's to prove to yourself that you can survive, even thrive, without universal approval. Every time you do this, you're rewiring your brain. The anxiety of "what if they don't like me" gets replaced with "I like me," and that's the only vote that counts. And when you stumble, because you will, that's part of the training. The Stoics didn't preach perfection, they preached persistence. So tonight, journal again, but this time hunt for tiny victories. Did you catch yourself mid-pleasing and pause? Did you bite back an apology for something that wasn't your fault? Those are wins. Stack them. Over time, you'll stop asking, "How can I make them pick me?" and start declaring, "I've already picked myself." And that's when everything changes. Amor Fati, love your fate. It sounds radical, maybe even impossible, when what you're craving is acceptance. But this Stoic concept, later championed by Nietzsche, is the ultimate antidote to pick-me energy, because it's not about resigning yourself to rejection. It's about seeing every no, every ignored text, every closed door as fuel for something better. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly, the obstacle is the way. That person who didn't choose you, that job that passed you over, they're not roadblocks, they're redirects. Pick-me energy thrives on the fear of missing out, the terror of being left behind. But Amor Fati whispers, what if you're being steered toward what's actually meant for you? Think about the last time you didn't get what you thought you wanted. Maybe it was a relationship that fizzled or a friendship that turned one-sided. At the time, it felt like failure, but looking back, didn't it free you for something truer? That's Amor Fati in action. The Stoics didn't just tolerate setbacks, they revered them. Because every loss strips away what wasn't yours to begin with, leaving only what's real. When you stop begging for a seat at a table that doesn't feed you, you start building your own feast. Here's the pivot. Pick-me energy assumes rejection means you're lacking, not pretty enough, not funny enough, not worthy enough. Amor Fati flips that script. It says rejection means you're mismatched, and mismatches aren't failures, they're corrections. Imagine scrolling through a playlist, skipping songs until one makes you pause. Those skips weren't mistakes, they were necessary to find the right rhythm. Life works the same way. The dates that ghosted you, the cliques that excluded you, they weren't verdicts on your value. They were algorithms filtering out what doesn't resonate so you can hear your own anthem. Marcus Aurelius journaled about this daily. He'd reframe every annoyance, a rude colleague, a missed opportunity as training. You're being hardened, not harmed. He'd remind himself, that's the mindset shift. When you love your fate, indifference from others stops feeling like a wound and starts feeling like weather. It just is. You don't curse the rain for falling, you grab an umbrella or dance in it. Same with rejection. Either way, you're not waiting for permission to live. So how do you practice this? Start by rewriting your internal monologue. Next time you face a no, add 2 words. Good because now I'm free for something better. Good because they showed me their character early. Good because I'm one step closer to my real tribe. This isn't toxic positivity, it's tactical reframing. You're not denying the sting, you're alchemizing it into direction. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop fearing rejection, you stop emitting desperation. People are drawn to those who move through the world like they trust their own path, even the detours. Amor Fati isn't about loving pain, it's about loving progress. Every wrong turn is just data guiding you home to yourself. So let them overlook you, let them choose someone else. While they're busy picking, you're already walking toward what's already yours. Now let's ground this in something practical. Grab your phone and open your notes app. Write down 3 past rejections that felt like the end of the world, then finish this sentence for each. This was actually good because. Maybe that failed relationship led you to a passion project you neglected. Maybe being left out of that group forced you to find kinder friends. The goal isn't to pretend it didn't hurt, it's to prove that even the hurt served you. That's Amor Fati, not just accepting fate, but embracing it like a co-author of your story. Because when you stop fighting redirections, you start recognizing them as the universe whispering, trust me, you're going to want both hands free for what's coming. Take Taylor Swift's infamous breakup anthems, the ones where she turned heartbreak into chart-topping gold. Most people see those songs as clapbacks or revenge plots, but dig deeper and you'll find a masterclass in Amor Fati. When her very public relationships crumbled, the world watched as she was painted as too much or too emotional, too intense, too needy. The pick-me energy would have begged for a quieter, smaller version of herself, one that didn't write songs about her exes, one that made herself palatable to the critics. But what did she do instead? She doubled down on her craft, her truth, her voice. Shake It Off isn't just a catchy hook, it's stoic resilience in pop form. The haters gonna hate, not a plea for them to stop, but a declaration that their opinions belong in the can't control column. And look what grew from that soil. Albums that redefined her career, a fan base that adores her because she refuses to shrink. That's the power of loving your fate. The rejection, the ridicule, they weren't roadblocks, they were raw material. The Stoics would have called this the art of alchemy, taking what was meant to break you and forging it into fuel. Think about it. If Taylor had wasted energy begging for approval from those who walked away, would she have created Red's raw vulnerability or 1989 reinvention? Doubtful. Instead, she treated every breakup like a closed chapter, not a verdict on her worth. I'm dancing on my own. That's Amor Fati in practice. Dancing not because someone's watching, but because your music is still playing. Now zoom out to your own life. That job rejection, that friendship ghosting, what if they're not proof of your inadequacy, but plot twists steering you toward a bigger story? The Stoics didn't just preach this, they lived it. Seneca, exiled to Corsica, didn't wallow. He wrote letters that became timeless philosophy. Epictetus, born enslaved, didn't fixate on his chains. He focused on the freedom no one could take, his mind. Their setbacks became their signatures, and that's available to you too. Here's how to try it today. The next time life hands you a no, borrow Taylor's pen. Literally, grab a journal and write your version of a breakup song, not to wallow but to reframe. Remember when they said I wouldn't recover? Well, here's what I built instead. List the skills you gained, the boundaries you set, the person you became because it didn't work out. That's Amor Fati in action, not denying the pain but trusting it's carving space for something truer. Because the moment you stop begging to be picked is the moment you start choosing yourself, and that's a song worth singing. Picture this. You send a risky text, maybe a boundary you've avoided setting, or a confession you've bottled up. Your thumb hovers over send, heart racing, because what if they leave you on read? What if they laugh? What if they vanish? That pick-me panic isn't just fear. It's the terror of the unknown, the dread of a rejection you haven't braced for. Now imagine a different approach. Before you even hit send, you close your eyes and say, they might ignore this, and if they do, I'll be okay. That's Premeditatio Malorum, Seneca's ancient hack for dismantling desperation. The Stoic practice of premeditation of evils isn't about pessimism, it's about vaccination. Just like exposing your body to a weakened virus builds immunity, exposing your mind to worst-case scenarios before they happen weakens their power over you. Here's how it works. When you're stuck in pick-me mode, rejection feels like a grenade because you've never rehearsed survival. But Seneca would argue, play the tape all the way through. Ghosted, you'll rediscover hobbies you sidelined for their attention. Laughed at, you'll learn who respects authenticity. Left out, you'll find quieter rooms where you don't have to shout to be heard. The goal isn't to dwell on pain, it's to prove you can handle it. Modern dating culture weaponizes this fear of the unknown. Why hasn't he texted back? Spirals into maybe I'm unlovable because we catastrophize in the dark. But Premeditatio Malorum flips on the lights. It's the difference between stumbling through a haunted house, jumping at every shadow, and walking through that same house in broad daylight, seeing the props for what they are, cardboard and string. When you mentally rehearse rejection, you strip it of its boogeyman status. Oh, this again. I've already lived through it in my mind. I know the script. Let's get practical. Next time you're tempted to mold yourself for approval, pause and run Seneca's drill. Ask, what's the worst that could happen if I'm myself? Maybe they'll call you too intense. Maybe the group chat will go silent. Maybe you'll eat lunch alone. Now ask, could I survive that? Not just would it hurt, but could I stand back up? The answer is always yes. You've survived embarrassment before. You've navigated loneliness. You've rebuilt after worse. That's the core of this practice. Realizing rejection isn't a full stop, it's a comma. Here's where pick-me energy gets it backwards. It assumes preparedness will make you colder, that imagining rejection will push people away, but the opposite happens. When you've already sat with the worst-case scenario, your energy shifts from please pick me to I'll be fine either way. And that's magnetic. Think of the friend who speaks their mind without apologizing, the coworker who pitches bold ideas without sweating the backlash. Their confidence isn't arrogance, it's premeditatio malorum in action. They've already walked through the fire in their mind, the real thing, just smoke. Try this tonight. Write down 3 fears clinging to your pick-me habits. If I stop people pleasing at work, I'll get passed over for promotions. If I set boundaries with my partner, they'll leave. Now, beneath each, write. And then what? Keep going until you hit bedrock. They leave, then I'll grieve. Then I'll realize I deserved someone who respects my limits. Then I'll meet people who don't make love conditional on compliance. See, the monster under the bed shrinks when you name it. Seneca wasn't suggesting we obsess over doom scenarios, he was teaching us to befriend them. When you stop running from rejection, you stop giving it the power to derail you. That text you're scared to send it. That opinion you're biting back, speak it, not because you're guaranteed acceptance, but because you've already tasted the alternative and found it survivable. The Stoics called this the double blow, suffering once in anticipation and again in reality. But here's the twist: once you realize the first blow is optional, the second loses its sting. So the next time pick-me panic starts whispering, answer it with Premeditatio Malorum. They might not like the real me, and if they don't, I've already met the person who will, the version of me on the other side of this fear. That's the kind of confidence no one can give you, but no one can take away either. Imagine standing at the edge of a diving board, toes curled over the edge, stomach lurching at the thought of jumping. That's what social anxiety feels like, the paralyzing fear of taking the plunge into authenticity. Terrified the water will be too cold, or worse, that no one will notice you jumped at all. But here's the truth: pick-me energy thrives in that hesitation. It's the voice that whispers, what if they don't like the real you? So let's dismantle that fear, Stoic style, with a modern twist on an ancient tool, fear setting. Tim Ferriss popularized this exercise, but its roots dig straight into Stoic soil. The idea is simple yet transformative. Instead of avoiding your anxieties, you dissect them under bright light until they lose their power. Grab a notebook. This is hands-on work. Draw 3 columns: fear, prevent, and repair. In the first, name the social scenario that turns you into a pick-me chameleon. If I say no to my friend's request, they'll think I'm selfish. If I speak up in the meeting, I'll sound stupid. Brutal honesty here is key. Now, the prevent column. How could you reduce the odds of this fear happening? For the friend scenario, I could explain my reasons with kindness. For the meeting, I'll prepare bullet points beforehand. This isn't about controlling outcomes, it's about reclaiming agency. Stoicism teaches that preparation isn't anxiety, it's empowerment. But here's where most people stop and where Stoics go deeper: the repair column. If the worst happens, how will you rebuild? Maybe your friend does guilt trip you. Maybe your idea is met with silence. Now what? I'll remind myself that boundaries aren't cruel, they're necessary. I'll reflect on whether I respect the opinions of people who dismiss me. This step is your armor, because pick-me desperation isn't just fear of rejection, it's fear of your own inability to handle it. But when you've already scripted your comeback, rejection becomes a detour, not a dead end. Let's make this visceral. Think of a time you altered your behavior to dodge judgment. Maybe you nodded along to a joke that made you uncomfortable, or hid a quirky hobby to seem normal. Now replay it with fear setting. Fear, they'll think I'm weird. Prevent, I could share it casually without apology. Repair, if they mock me, I'll remember. Their laughter says more about their narrowness than my worth. Feel the shift, that Stoic resilience kicking in. You're no longer begging for acceptance, you're prepared to outlast its absence. Now the ultimate test, cost-benefit analysis. Ask, what's the cost of staying in pick-me mode? Hint, it's not just missed opportunities. It's the slow erosion of selfhood, the hobbies abandoned, the truth swallowed, the life lived as an echo of others' expectations. Now weigh that against the worst-case scenario of authenticity. Even if your fears come true, isn't the trade-off worth it? As Seneca wrote, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Fear setting drags those imagined monsters into daylight where they're smaller than you thought. Here's your homework. Pick one social interaction this week where you'd normally people please. Before walking in, do this exercise, then act as if you've already survived the worst. You'll notice 2 things. First, the catastrophe you imagined rarely happens. Second, even when it does, you're still standing, and that's the secret. The less you fear rejection, the less you'll crave validation. And the less you crave validation, the more you'll radiate the kind of confidence that can't be faked, the kind that comes from knowing bone deep that you can handle whatever comes. Because here's the paradoxical truth: the people who seem effortlessly magnetic aren't those who never feared judgment. They're the ones who have made peace with it. They've walked through the fire of their own anxiety and found ashes aren't the end, they're just fertilizer for something sturdier. So next time panic creeps in, don't suppress it. Interrogate it, write it down, break it apart, and watch as the need to be chosen dissolves into the freedom to choose yourself. Imagine standing in front of a locked door, fists pounding, voice hoarse from screaming to be let in. Now imagine stepping back, realizing the door was never the only path forward, that the walls around it were scalable, the windows open, the backyard full of undiscovered paths. That's the essence of the obstacle is the way, a Stoic principle that transforms rejection from a dead end into a detour sign. Ryan Holiday resurrected this ancient mindset for the modern age, but its roots trace back to figures like Cato the Younger, who turned political defeat into a masterclass in uncompromising integrity. When Julius Caesar's army surrounded him, offering mercy if he'd just bend the knee, Cato didn't beg for inclusion. He chose death over compromise, extreme. Maybe, but his defiance became a rallying cry for generations. Sometimes exclusion isn't failure, it's proof you refuse to abandon your core. The pick-me frenzy mistakes obstacles for stop signs. Didn't get the promotion, must prove I'm harder working. Ghosted by a date, must become more attractive. It's exhausting because it assumes every no is a verdict on your worth rather than an invitation to forge a different path. But history's most resilient minds, from Epictetus, enslaved and crippled, to Mandela in his prison cell, treated roadblocks as raw material. Mandela didn't waste energy pleading with his jailers to like him. He studied them, mastered their language, and turned his cell into a classroom. By the time he walked free, he wasn't just surviving oppression, he was ready to dismantle it. That's the pivot, when you stop seeing obstacles as something to endure and start seeing them as something to use. You stop needing permission to move forward. Take the tech world's infamous rejections. Airbnb's founders were laughed out of investor meetings, told their idea was absurd. The pick-me response would have been to dilute their vision into something more conventional. Instead, they sold novelty cereal boxes to fund their startup, literally turning no into capital. Same story with J.K. Rowling, whose Harry Potter manuscript was rejected 12 times. Had she rewritten it to fit each publisher's taste, we might have gotten a forgettable middle ground fantasy. Instead, she leaned into the very quirks that made it unmarketable: the odd names, the British boarding school setting, the darker themes, and created a cultural phenomenon. Rejection didn't break these people, it filtered them. It separated those who'd contort themselves for approval from those who'd let exclusion sharpen their edge. Here's how to apply this today. Next time you face a no, ask, what does this free me to do? That job that rejected you, maybe it would have stifled your creativity. That friend group that excluded you, maybe their gossip would have dulled your kindness. Even in heartbreak, the Stoic question isn't, why don't they want me, but what can I build with this empty space? When the artist Marina Abramovic's partner left her after 12 years, she didn't chase him. She channeled the pain into The Artist Is Present, a performance where she sat silently for 700 hours meeting strangers' gazes. The piece became legendary, not because she avoided the obstacle of abandonment, but because she sat with it until it transformed her. This philosophy isn't about toxic positivity, it's about tactical reframing. The obstacle isn't good because it feels good, it's useful because it forces growth. Think of a river hitting a boulder. Does it stop? No. It finds crevices, wears down stone, carves canyons. You're that water. Every no is just topography redirecting your flow somewhere stronger. So the next time you're tempted to shrink for inclusion, remember Cato's last words: I'd rather stand with the few who are right than the many who are wrong. Some doors aren't meant to open, but the walls, they're yours to climb. Memento Mori, Latin for remember you must die. At first glance, it sounds morbid, even unsettling. But this Stoic practice isn't about fear, it's about focus. Picture yourself decades from now, lying on your deathbed, replaying your life's highlights. Will you cherish the hours spent agonizing over Instagram likes, the night you reshaped your personality to fit into someone else's inner circle, the opportunities you missed because you were too busy auditioning for approval? That's the gut check of Memento Mori. It cuts through the noise of trivial validation seeking like a scalpel. Seneca put it brutally in his letters. You live as if you were destined to live forever. No thought of your frailty ever enters your head. How much time has been stolen from you by people who demanded your attention but didn't deserve it? Think about the last time you watered down your opinion to avoid debate, or laughed at a joke that made your skin crawl just to seem agreeable. In the moment, it feels like survival, like you're scoring points in some invisible game, but zoom out. When death strips away all pretense, what remains? Not the nods of approval from strangers, not the hollow victories of being chosen, but the moments you stood firm in your truth. The Stoics didn't use mortality as a scare tactic. They wielded it as a lens to magnify what's real. Marcus Aurelius scribbled reminders to himself like, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think," not to paralyze himself with dread, but to liberate himself from petty concerns. Here's the twist. Pick-me energy isn't just needy, it's wasteful. Every minute spent tailoring yourself to others' whims is a minute stolen from your unlived life. Seneca raged against this in his letters to Lucilius. Were all the geniuses of history to focus on one stupid man's approval, they'd still be idiots. He wasn't exaggerating. Leonardo da Vinci didn't paint the Mona Lisa by crowdsourcing her smile. Marie Curie didn't discover radium by begging colleagues to validate her hypotheses. They worked with the quiet urgency of people who knew time was finite. And that greatness requires ignoring the peanut gallery. Modern culture tries to sell us immortality through legacy, as if accumulating followers or being remembered by acquaintances is a substitute for living fully. But the Stoics would call that delusion. Your Twitter eulogy won't whisper how many parties you were invited to. It'll echo the ideas you fought for, the love you gave, the risks you took. Steve Jobs, facing death, famously said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices." That's Memento Mori in action. When the noise of others' opinions fades, only your own voice remains. Let's make this practical. Carry a deathbed test in your pocket. Next time you're tempted to twist yourself into a pretzel for approval, pause and ask, if today were my last day, would this exchange matter? Not in a nihilistic way, but with surgical clarity. That text you're over-editing to sound clever, the co-worker's opinion you're overvaluing, the hobby you've hidden because it's not cool enough, filtered through mortality, their weight shifts. You start savoring time like currency, spending it only where it yields meaning. And here's the secret no one tells you. When you live with this awareness, you don't become grim, you become alive. The poet Mary Oliver distilled it perfectly. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? The answer isn't, win the approval of people who'll forget me by next Tuesday. It's to stand so firmly in your own worth that even death can't shake your certainty. You showed up unapologetically for the only audience that ever truly mattered, your future self nodding from your deathbed with pride. Try this experiment. Set your phone wallpaper to a simple skull emoji, prayer beads, and every time you unlock your screen to text someone out of loneliness or desperation, let that tiny memento mori stare back at you. It's not meant to scare you, it's meant to focus you. Before you fire off that "you up" text at 2 a.m. or over-edit a caption to seem cooler, pause. That skull isn't there to judge, it's asking, is this how you want to spend your irreplaceable time? Think about how often we treat our attention like loose change, scattering it for crumbs of validation. Scrolling through an ex's feed, rehearsing small talk to impress strangers, refreshing notifications like a slot machine hoping for a dopamine jackpot. But the Stoics knew attention is your most finite resource. Seneca wrote, "People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to wasting time, they're most extravagant." That skull on your screen, it's a pocket-sized philosopher cutting through the noise with one brutal question. When you're dying, will this moment matter? Here's why this ritual works. Neuroscience shows that visual triggers rewire habits faster than willpower alone. The skull isn't just a symbol, it's a circuit breaker for impulsive behavior. Like training a dog with a clicker, your brain starts linking that image to conscious choice. Over time, you'll catch yourself mid-reach for your phone, not because you're being good, but because mortality tapped you on the shoulder. Marcus Aurelius did this with physical reminders, keeping a skeleton at his banquet table, but your phone is the modern feast where distractions swarm. Make it practical. Pair the wallpaper with a 10-second rule. When the skull appears, count to 10 and ask, am I reaching out from fullness or lack? If it's loneliness masquerading as connection, open your notes app instead and journal. If it's genuine care, hit send with presence. The goal isn't to stop texting, it's to stop using people as emotional band-aids. And here's the beautiful side effect. When you stop scattering your attention, you start attracting the right kind. Like a gardener pruning dead branches, you create space for relationships that don't require you to bargain with your worth. The skull emoji isn't morbid, it's mercilessly clarifying. It whispers, you don't have forever, so why beg for someone's seconds? Set it today. Let death be your shortcut to living. There's a quiet desperation in pick-me energy, a gnawing fear that if you don't cling tightly enough, you'll be left behind, forgotten, alone. But what if that anxiety stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of how connection actually works? Enter sympatheia, Marcus Aurelius' radical Stoic concept that everything in the universe is woven together like threads in a vast tapestry. This isn't just poetic fluff, it's a mindset shift that dissolves scarcity thinking. When you internalize that you're already part of the fabric of existence, not a loose thread begging to be sewn in, you stop grasping at relationships like they're life rafts in an ocean. You realize the ocean itself holds you up. Marcus wrote in his Meditations, "What injures the hive injures the bee." He wasn't talking about altruism, he was pointing to a cosmic truth. Your worth isn't something individuals bestow upon you, it's inherent to your place in the interconnected whole. Think of a forest. Does a single tree panic when birds nest in its neighbor's branches instead of its own? Of course not. It trusts that the ecosystem sustains all its parts. That's sympatheia in action. The pick-me mindset shrinks your world to a single spotlight. Do they see me? Do they want me? While sympatheia pulls the lens wide, revealing countless points of light where you belong. Modern neuroscience backs this up. Studies on social pain show that loneliness triggers the same brain pathways as physical hunger, an evolutionary signal that we're meant to be connected. But here's the catch: the pick-me response misreads that signal. It assumes connection is a limited resource, like fighting for the last cookie in the jar. Sympatheia rewires that instinct. When you truly believe in the universality of bonds, you stop seeing every rejection as proof of scarcity and start recognizing it as redirection toward your rightful place in the web. This plays out practically in friendships. Ever met someone who radiates ease in social settings, not because they're the loudest or most charming, but because they're at home in themselves? That's sympatheia embodied. They don't chase approval because they know their value isn't transactional. Contrast that with the friend who morphs their personality to match whoever's in the room, anxiously monitoring laughs and eye contact for validation. The first person operates from abundance, the second from lack. Here's how to cultivate this. Next time you feel the pick-me twinge, say, when a friend cancels plans or a group chat moves on without you, pause and visualize Marcus' tapestry. Picture your threads extending beyond this single interaction, to the barrister who remembers your order, the co-worker who seeks your advice, the stranger who smiled at you on the subway. These aren't consolation prizes, they're proof of your woven-inness. The Stoics practiced this daily. Epictetus told his students, "You're a citizen of the universe first, a town second." When you anchor yourself in that broader belonging, temporary exclusions lose their sting. The irony, this mindset attracts deeper connections. People sense when you're not emotionally hungry, when your presence is a gift, not a demand. It's the difference between a sunflower straining toward every passing cloud and one rooted so deeply it becomes a landmark for others. So the next time scarcity whispers, "You're being left out," whisper back, "I'm already part of everything." And watch how your need to be chosen relaxes into the grace of knowing you already belong. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic warrior philosopher who trained like a Spartan in the middle of Rome's luxury, had a brutal but brilliant prescription for weakness: seek out discomfort voluntarily. Not as punishment, but as training. While everyone else chased soft beds and constant validation, he slept on the ground, ate simple food, and wore thin clothes in winter. His logic: how can you expect to handle life's inevitable hardships if you're addicted to constant ease? For modern pick-me energy, this is revolutionary, because approval seeking isn't just about wanting love, it's about avoiding the discomfort of not being loved. Think about it, how many of your people-pleasing habits are really just escapes from unease? The constant texting to avoid silence, the laughter that's a half-second too quick at bad jokes. The dating app notifications addiction. These aren't just bids for connection, they're distractions from sitting with yourself. Musonius called this out 2,000 years ago. We fear solitude because we fear meeting who we've become in the chase for approval. That's why his drills, cold showers, fasting, sleeping without pillows weren't masochism. They were resistance training for the soul. Every time you choose discomfort voluntarily, you're flexing the muscle that says, "I don't need external cushions to feel whole." Here's where it gets practical. Start with a discomfort diet. For 1 week, skip the heater in your car, letting winter air wake you up instead of caffeine and compliments. Leave your phone at home during lunch breaks, training yourself to enjoy your own company without broadcasting it. Say no to something trivial, a second scoop of ice cream, an unnecessary purchase, and sit with the craving instead of soothing it. These seem small, but they rebuild your relationship with lack, because pick-me energy isn't strength, it's withdrawal symptoms from the drug of constant validation. Every time you voluntarily step away from comfort, you're proving to yourself, "I can stand on solid ground even when no one's applauding." The magic happens when you realize solitude isn't a threat, it's a tuning fork. Nietzsche, who studied the Stoics closely, wrote, "The strength of a person's spirit can be measured by how much truth they can endure. That truth, you were never empty. You just kept mistaking the echoes of others' voices for your own." So take Musonius' challenge. Turn the shower cold for the last 30 seconds. Sit in silence for 10 minutes without reaching for your phone. Let yourself feel the itch of, "What if they forget me?" without scratching it. That itch is the old wiring burning away the circuitry that convinced you comfort was the same thing as safety. Break that link, and suddenly, chasing approval feels like wearing someone else's shoes, awkward, unnecessary, and slowing you down. Because here's the paradox no one tells you. The people who radiate unshakable confidence aren't those who never doubt, they're the ones who have practiced doubting and kept walking anyway. Voluntary discomfort isn't about toughness, it's about trust. Trust that you can survive silence. Trust that your worth isn't hostage to attention. Trust that when you stop running from discomfort, you start hearing the voice that matters most, your own. So tonight, do the unthinkable. Eat a meal alone at a restaurant without your phone. No book, no podcast, no performative "I'm so independent" selfie. Just you, the clink of silverware, and the realization that solitude was never the monster, it was the mirror, and what you'll see staring back isn't someone who needs to be chosen. It's someone who's already free. Let's try an experiment. For the next 30 days, you're not allowed to fish for compliments. No humble bragging about your achievements. No strategically angled selfies with captions like, "Ugh, feel so gross today," when you clearly don't. No dropping hints about your promotion hoping someone will notice. Cold turkey. Why? Because every time you twist yourself into a pretzel just to hear, "You're amazing," you're handing someone else the microphone to your self-worth, and that's a dangerous habit. The Stoics called this outsourcing your inner court. Imagine your confidence is a kingdom. Every time you beg for validation, you're letting outsiders vote on your laws instead of ruling from your own throne. This challenge isn't about rejecting kindness or becoming a robot. It's about noticing the difference between receiving praise and requiring it. Start by documenting your cravings. That moment you almost text a friend, "I feel invisible today," just to hear them say, "No, you're gorgeous." Pause, write it down instead. Monday, 2 p.m. Wanted reassurance about my outfit. Didn't ask, survived. At first, it'll feel like withdrawal. That's the point. You're detoxing from a drug you never needed. Now, the deeper work. Replace the vacuum with self-validation. When you would normally fish, ask, "What do I wish they'd say? Can I give that to myself?" If you're craving, "You're so talented," pause and list 3 specific skills you've honed. If it's "You're beautiful," stand in front of the mirror and say it without irony. This isn't narcissism, it's sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius wrote his affirmations in private journals, not on public altars. By week 3, something shifts. You'll catch yourself mid-manipulation. Wait, why am I pretending to not know this answer just to seem humble? And laugh. The real win isn't just resisting the bait, it's realizing you were never the fish. You're the ocean, and oceans don't beg for waves, they make their own. Keep a tally. Every day you don't fish, note how it felt. Maybe you discovered compliments taste sweeter when they're unsolicited. Maybe you stopped caring as much. Either way, you've broken the chain between attention and worth, and that's when the magic happens. People start complimenting you more, not because you baited them, but because authenticity is magnetic. The less you need their applause, the more they'll want to give it. So here's your final challenge. After 30 days, burn the journal, literally or metaphorically. Watch the smoke carry away the old habit of seeking permission to feel enough. The Stoics' new fire purifies. Let it. Close your eyes for a moment and picture this not from eye level but from 20,000 feet above. That text you sent 3 hours ago still marked delivered. The group chat that went silent right after your message. From up here, they're not even pixels. They're less than dust. Now pull back further past the atmosphere, beyond the moon, until Earth shrinks to a pale blue dot. Those late-night spiral sessions dissecting someone's tone over brunch. The agonizing over who sat where at the party. From this distance, they're quieter than static. This is the view from above, Marcus Aurelius' favorite Stoic exercise for vaporizing pick-me anxiety. He practiced it daily, scribbling in his journals. Think of the whole universe where your offense is but a dot, then erase even that. Modern science backs him up. Astronauts call it the overview effect, a radical shift in perspective when seeing Earth from space, where borders and conflicts vanish into sheer fragility. The Stoics hacked this mentality centuries before rockets. By mentally zooming out, you expose how microscopic your social dramas really are, that co-worker who took credit for your idea. In the timeline of the cosmos, their name won't outlast a mayfly. The date who ghosted you, their silence won't even register in the fossil record. Here's how to weaponize this. Next time your stomach knots over someone's indifference, launch your imagination into orbit. Watch as the scene shrinks. Your phone becomes a speck, your city a smudge, your continent a brushstroke. From here, does their approval still feel like oxygen, or does it look like what it is? a temporary arrangement of atoms, as meaningless as two rocks deciding not to touch. The Stoics weren't dismissing pain, they were contextualizing it. Your feelings are real, but they're triggers, less substantial than a sneeze in a hurricane. Try this tonight. Lie flat on the floor, the colder the surface, the better, and stretch your arms starfish wide. Pretend you're not in your room, but mounted on Voyager 1, hurtling past Jupiter. Now replay this week's most humiliating moment, that awkward work meeting where you stumbled over words from Saturn's rings, its trivia, the friend who forgot to invite you. From Andromeda's vantage, their pettiness can't even be measured. What does remain visible from light years away? Your integrity, your courage to keep showing up. Those are celestial. The irony, this exercise doesn't make life feel smaller. It makes you feel bigger. When you stop mortgaging your peace for planetary dust, you start walking like someone who knows their true scale. Marcus put it perfectly. You are a soul carrying a corpse, as the saying goes. Your worth was never meant to be measured in texts answered or party invites. It was meant to orbit something eternal, so let them leave you on read. The stars never check their phones. Ego is the enemy, and nowhere does it disguise itself more cunningly than in pick-me behavior. That desperate need to be noticed, to be chosen, to stand out in the crowd, it's not humility, it's ego in a mask. Ryan Holiday's modern classic Ego is the enemy nails it. Ego isn't just arrogance, it's insecurity dressed as importance. Think about it. When you tweak your personality to fit someone else's mold, when you mute your opinions to avoid rocking the boat, when you chase likes or laughs or glances, whose hunger are you really feeding? Not theirs, yours, the part of you that's terrified of being ordinary, of blending in, of disappearing. That's ego's whisper, prove you matter. Epictetus, the Stoic slave-turned-teacher, offered an antidote 2,000 years ago. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Not as a self-loathing mantra, but as liberation. Real worth doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't beg for front-row seats or scramble to be the main character. It stands firm, even in the shadows. Contrast that with the pick-me dance, the performative vulnerability, the strategic self-deprecation, the notice me. Energy camouflaged as humility. Ego doesn't always roar, sometimes it just fishes. Here's the irony. The more you try to convince people of your value, the less valuable you appear. Ever met someone who name drops in conversations or hijacks stories to showcase their accomplishments? It reeks of insecurity, not confidence. Now picture someone who listens deeply, speaks sparingly, and lets their actions echo louder than their words. That's Epictetus' humility in action. The first person is like a street vendor shouting about their wares. The second is a silent artisan whose craft draws pilgrims. One needs applause, the other is the applause. Modern culture confuses this. Social media rewards the loudest, not the wisest. We're trained to equate visibility with worth, mistaking followers for fulfillment. But the Stoics saw through this. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of Rome, wrote in his private journal, "The applause of the many means nothing. The admiration of the few means little." Your own approval means everything. He didn't scribble that for likes. He wrote it to remind himself that true power doesn't beg for validation. It knows it's valid. Let's expose ego's sneakiest trick. It convinces you that being ignored is a fate worse than death. So you contort, laughing louder, dressing sharper, nodding faster, all to dodge the horror of being overlooked. But here's the truth ego won't admit. Being seen isn't the same as being valued. The people who matter don't need you to perform. They see you when you're not trying. Practice this today. Catch yourself mid-pick-me, that moment you're about to interrupt with a, "That reminds me of when I," to steer attention back to you. Pause, let the silence hang. Notice how ego squirms, then ask, is what I'm about to say adding light or just proving I'm smart? The Stoics called this procession attention to intention. It's not about stifling yourself, it's about aligning with something deeper than applause. And here's the twist: when you stop feeding ego, you start attracting respect. Not the cheap kind that comes from flattery, but the kind that sticks, the kind that recognizes your quiet competence without you pointing it out. Because humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And in that space, something miraculous happens. You stop needing to be picked. You realize you were never lost in the first place. Imagine your mind as a courtroom where every anxious thought gets cross-examined by the sharpest lawyer in history, your future self. That's Stoic journaling, and Marcus Aurelius was its master. His Meditations wasn't some polished memoir, it was raw self-dialogue scribbled by candlelight, wrestling his own pick-me demons. Why do you care if they ignore you? Is your worth really so fragile? He'd challenge himself. Today, we're stealing his blueprint to dismantle validation seeking at the root. Grab a notebook. This is where philosophy gets practical. Start with the itch the moment your thumb hovers over a double text or your stomach knots when someone leaves you on read. Don't suppress it, dissect it, write the thought verbatim. If I don't make them laugh, they'll think I'm boring. Now switch pens literally and channel Marcus. Respond as if you're advising your dearest friend. And if they do, would you rather be remembered as the class clown or the one who spoke truth when it mattered? The magic isn't in positive thinking, it's in precision thinking. By exposing irrational fears to logic, you vaporize their power. Marcus' journals thrived on brutal honesty. He didn't just write, "I fear rejection." He dug deeper. What exactly do I lose if someone dislikes me? Their opinion that was never mine to keep. Try this with modern triggers. That Instagram post that's not getting likes, script both sides, validation craving. No one double-tapped, my content must suck, Stoic rebuttal, or the algorithm buried it. Or they're busy living lives as complex as yours. Either way, did you create for them or for you? This isn't self-help fluff, it's cognitive behavioral therapy's ancient ancestor. Studies show that writing reframes neural pathways, literally rewiring your brain to detach from external approval. The key: specificity. Generic "I am enough" affirmations bounce off like rain on pavement. But when you dismantle a fear molecule by molecule, what proof do I have that being left out means I'm unworthy? Was Einstein worthless because he ate lunch alone at Princeton? You forge unshakable self-trust. Here's your challenge for 7 nights. Borrow Marcus' sword and shield method. Left page, record every pick-me moment, felt jealous when Sarah got complimented. Right page, rebut like a Stoic general. Does her light dim yours, or is the universe vast enough for all brilliance? Over time, you'll notice something revolutionary. The left page shrinks. The right grows bolder, and one day you'll catch yourself mid-spiral, reaching not for your phone, but for your journal, not to plead for mercy, but to declare sovereignty. Because here's the truth no one tells you: confidence isn't the absence of insecurity, it's the mastery of it. Marcus didn't journal his way to perfection, he journaled his way to clarity. And clarity, it turns out, is the ultimate antidote to begging for crumbs when you're the whole damn feast. Chrysippus, the third head of the Stoic school, drew a line in the sand between two kinds of desires, and it's the key to untangling why pick-me energy leaves you so drained. On one side, natural desires, the hunger for growth, connection, purpose, things that align with your deepest humanity. On the other, empty desires, the craving for applause, the itch to be noticed, the obsession with being chosen. The difference isn't in what you want, but why you want it. Natural desires flow from your core. Empty desires are ghosts borrowed from others' expectations. Think about the last time you posted a gym selfie. Was it to celebrate progress or to harvest compliments? The action might look identical, but the root separates nourishment from starvation. Pick-me behavior thrives on empty desires, the compulsion to prove you're funny, smart, attractive enough to deserve space in someone's life. Chrysippus called these desires false judgments, mistaking external validation for oxygen. The irony, the more you chase them, the hungrier you get. Like drinking seawater to quench thirst, every like or flirtatious glance just deepens the dehydration. Here's how to spot the difference. Natural desires feel expansive. When you're learning a language because you love how verbs unlock new worlds, that's your soul stretching. But when you're practicing pickup lines to impress a date, that's your ego contracting around their hypothetical approval. The Stoics weren't against pleasure, they were against dependency. Epictetus put it bluntly, freedom isn't the right to do what you want, but the will to want what's right. Translation, wanting to be admired isn't the problem. Needing it to feel alive is. Modern culture blurs this line. Social media rewards empty desires with dopamine hits, conditioning us to confuse visibility with value. The influencer chasing viral fame, the employee staying late for the boss's praise, the partner molding themselves into their significant others, type, all are trapped in Chrysippus' warning. When you make your worth contingent on others' eyes, you blind yourself to your own light. Try this audit for 1 week. Track your desires in 2 columns, for me and for them. That impulse to buy the trendy outfit, is it because you love the fabric or because you dread being left out? The extra hour perfecting a work presentation, is it pride in your craft or anxiety over your manager's opinion? The goal isn't to purge every outward-facing desire, but to notice which ones leash your happiness to someone else's whims. Here's the pivot. Natural desires have a telltale signature. They survive silence. The writer who journals without readers, the runner who trains without medals, the friend who listens without needing credit. These are desires rooted in arete, the Stoic concept of excellence for its own sake. Contrast that with pick-me cravings which crumble without an audience. Ever noticed how hollow it feels to receive praise for something you faked? That's your soul rejecting counterfeit fuel. Chrysippus offered a litmus test. If no one ever knew you did it, would it still feel worthwhile? If the answer's yes, you're feeding your humanity. If not, you're feeding a hologram. So how do you reroute? Start by starving the empty desires. Next time you feel the pull to perform, pause. Ask, am I doing this to express myself or to convince someone? If it's the latter, walk away. The withdrawal will ache, but that's the ache of realignment, like a spine straightening after years in a crooked chair. Meanwhile, feed natural desires lavishly. Dive into hobbies with no social media potential. Have conversations that leave no digital trace. Let parts of you grow wild and unobserved. Here's the secret the Stoics knew. Empty desires shrink you, natural desires expand you. And in that expansion, you discover something revolutionary. You were never hungry for others' crumbs. You just forgot you were the feast. Cleans, the second leader of the Stoic school, was once jeered at in public. As he walked through Athens, a crowd mocked his weathered appearance, his threadbare cloak, his sunken cheeks, the calluses from hauling water nightly to support himself while studying philosophy. Instead of shrinking or firing back, he paused, turned to face them, and let the insults wash over him like rain. Then he did something astonishing. He applauded. Not sarcastically, but with genuine appreciation. If their words were true, he said, I should correct myself. If false, they're irrelevant. Either way, why resist? That's the art of acquiescence, the Stoic superpower of receiving criticism without crumbling or clapping back. And it's the ultimate dismantling of pick-me energy, which treats every slight as an emergency requiring immediate defense or apology. Picture this modern parallel. You're in a work meeting when a colleague dismisses your idea with a snide remark. The pick-me reflex kicks in. Your face flushes, your pulse races, and you either over-explain your point, begging for validation, or retreat into silence, begging to be spared further scorn. Cleans would have done neither. He'd have treated that snark like weather, noticeable but not personal. Because here's the truth, pick-me energy misses. Defensiveness is just inverted validation seeking. When you scramble to justify, correct, or appease, you're still handing your worth over for inspection. Acquiescence, though, that's sovereignty. It says, you can shout your opinions into the wind. I'll keep walking. The Stoics framed this as prohersis, the faculty of choice, separating what's yours, judgment, action, character, from what isn't others, words, moods, approval. Cleans mastered this divide. When his students asked how he stayed unshaken by mockery, he'd hold up a copper coin. If I offered this to you and you refused it, who owns it? I do, they'd reply. Exactly, he'd say. Insults are like that. They only stick if you accept them. That's the core of acquiescence, letting criticism expire at your feet like an unclaimed package. Modern psychology confirms this. Studies on emotional resilience show that people who engage less with criticism, neither internalizing nor aggressively refuting it, experience less stress and higher self-worth. The pick-me trap, by contrast, obsessively monitors for disapproval like a smoke alarm set too sensitive, jumping at every whiff of negativity. Clean's approach offers a recalibration. Next time someone critiques your appearance, your work, your choices, try his 3-step filter. Is this true? If so, I'll grow from it. If not, why borrow their misperception? No drama, no defense, just discernment. But here's where it gets radical. Acquiescence isn't passive, it's strategic. When you stop wasting energy on countering every critic, you free up reserves for what actually matters. Think of Serena Williams smiling through outrageous on-court provocation, or Lincoln absorbing vicious personal attacks during the Civil War without diverting from his mission. Their power didn't come from being impervious to pain, but from refusing to let pain hijack their focus. The pick-me mindset, meanwhile, is like a knight constantly stopping mid-battle to polish their armor for the crowd, exhausting and utterly missing the point. Try this exercise for a week. Keep a tally of every critical comment you encounter, from a backhanded compliment to a full-on insult. Instead of reacting, practice Clean's pause. Literally count to 3 while asking, does this person's opinion change any truth about me? You'll notice something startling. Most criticism isn't about you at all. It's about the critic's insecurities, biases, or bad day. The art of acquiescence lets you sidestep their emotional baggage without carrying it an inch further. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop fighting perceptions, you start influencing them. There's an undeniable magnetism in someone who stands so firmly in their own truth that slights glance off like arrows hitting stone. Not because they're arrogant, but because they're anchored. That's the anti-pick-me grace under fire, not needing to be seen as right because you're too busy being real. So next time criticism flies your way, channel Clean's. Let it land where it may. Then keep moving, not away from growth, but toward what truly deserves your energy. Because the less you scramble to correct others' misreadings of you, the more clearly they'll see who you actually are. And that's a revelation no amount of approval seeking can fake. Imagine this: you've just shared a vulnerable post online, maybe a selfie without makeup or an opinion that goes against the grain. Then comes the comment, "Wow, you're so brave for posting that." On the surface, it sounds like praise, but it stings. That backhanded compliment is a covert dagger disguised as admiration but laced with judgment. It's designed to make you second-guess yourself, to wonder if you've somehow crossed an invisible line of acceptability. And in that moment, pick-me energy tempts you to backtrack, to delete, to over-explain, to soften your edges. But Stoicism offers a different path, the art of non-reactivity. Not silence, not aggression, but unshakable poise that refuses to hand over your power. Let's dissect why these backhanded jabs work. They operate on ambiguity, leaving you trapped in a mental loop. Were they being nice or nasty? Which is exactly where they want you, stuck in their orbit, dissecting their tone, wasting your energy. The Stoics called this procession the practice of guarding your attention. When Epictetus faced insults, he'd say, "If someone tried to hand you a rotten tomato, would you take it?" Then why take their rotten words? His point, the insult only lands if you stretch out your hands to catch it. Now, let's role play. Scenario 1, a coworker says, "You're so confident to wear that dress, I could never." The pick-me reflex might have you laughing awkwardly or rushing to change. Stoic non-reactivity, a simple, "Thanks, I love how it feels." No defensiveness, no invitation for further critique. You've acknowledged their words without endorsing their subtext. Scenario 2, a family member remarks, "It's cute how you're always chasing your dreams, even at your age." Instead of biting back or shrinking, try, "I appreciate your support. This isn't passive, it's strategic. By refusing to engage the barb, you expose its hollowness." But what about when the sting lingers? That's where Premeditatio Malorum comes in, preparing for these moments so they lose their punch. Picture this: before posting that photo or sharing your opinion, mentally rehearse the worst comments. "Someone will call me brave for being authentic, and if they do, I'll thank them and move on." This isn't pessimism, it's inoculation. When the jab comes, you're not caught off guard, you're already armored with indifference. Here's the deeper truth: backhanded compliments reveal more about the giver than the receiver. They're often projections of someone else's insecurities. Your boldness mirrors their self-doubt. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to not be like your enemy." When you respond with unflinching grace, you deny them the drama they crave. You're not ignoring the slight, you're transcending it. Practice this today. Script 3 canned responses to keep in your back pocket. 1. "Thanks for noticing." Disarms the subtext while ending the conversation. 2. "I'll take that as a compliment." Forces them to clarify their intent. Usually they won't. 3. "Interesting perspective." Shuts down debate without conceding ground. The goal isn't to win these exchanges, it's to exit them unchanged. Because the ultimate power move isn't clapping back, it's proving their words never held power over you in the first place, and that's how you turn their dagger into dust. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, was known for his tattered cloak and disdain for small talk. While Athenian elites jostled for status at banquets, he'd sit in the marketplace debating philosophy with sailors and slaves. When critics mocked his shabby appearance, he'd reply, "Better to wear out your cloak than your character." That single line slices through the heart of pick-me energy, the exhausting hustle to curate a persona that pleases everyone but yourself. Because here's the truth: reputation is what others think of you, character is what you know of yourself, and the moment you trade the second for the first, you've handed your compass to strangers. Modern culture glorifies this trade. Think of the influencer who spends hours staging candid coffee shop photos to project effortless cool, or the employee who laughs at the boss's offensive joke just to secure favor. These aren't just harmless social strategies, they're slow leaks in your integrity. Zeno called this building your house on a stampede. Chasing the ever-shifting approval of others guarantees collapse. Real stability comes from aligning with your values so deeply that external applause becomes optional, not oxygen. Take two musicians. One crafts songs tailored to TikTok trends, tweaking lyrics to go viral. The other writes in isolation, chasing melodies that haunt them at 3 a.m. The first might spike in streams, but the second builds something viral attention can't touch, a body of work that outlasts algorithms. That's the difference between reputation, a flickering spotlight, and character, an inner torch. Jazz legend Miles Davis embodied this when he turned his back on audiences mid-performance. Critics called it arrogance, he called it focus. Don't play what's there, play what's not there, he'd say. Translation: ignore the noise and dig for the truth only you can hear. The pick-me trap mistakes visibility for value. It assumes being talked about is the same as being significant, but history's most enduring figures often worked in obscurity. Emily Dickinson published fewer than a dozen poems in her lifetime, yet her private notebooks revolutionized poetry. Van Gogh sold one painting while alive, yet his commitment to his vision birthed masterpieces. Their reputations were postscripts, their character was the entire manuscript. Here's the litmus test Zeno would give you today. If everyone misunderstood you, but you knew you'd acted with integrity, could you sleep at night? The pick-me answer wavers. The Stoic answer is immediate, because when your worth isn't mortgaged to others' opinions, their misreadings become background static. You stop editing your essence to fit their narratives. Try this exercise for 1 week. Document every time you alter your behavior for optics. The Instagram story you almost didn't post because it wasn't aesthetic enough. The conversation where you nodded instead of disagreeing. Then ask, if no one ever found out about this choice, would I still make it? The gaps between yes and no reveal where you've outsourced your compass. The paradox: when you prioritize character, reputation often follows, but on your terms. Think of chefs who refuse to dumb down recipes for mass appeal, only to earn cult followings for their authenticity. Or activists like Bayard Rustin, who risked alienation by living openly as a gay black man in the 1960s, yet shaped civil rights history. Their power came not from chasing acceptance, but from standing so firmly in their truth that others recalibrated to them. Zeno's cloak eventually frayed to nothing, but his ideas, they've outlasted empires. That's the trade-off. Pick-me energy ignores, fabric decays, but integrity echoes. So ask yourself, what's worth more, 1,000 nodding followers or one unshakable spine? The answer writes your legacy. Picture your phone buzzing with a notification, except this time, it's not a like or a heart emoji. It's the opposite, a follower count dropping by the dozens, a dating app match unmatching mid-conversation. That pit in your stomach, that's the sting of withdrawing from the drug of validation. Now lean into it. This is negative visualization, Seneca's Stoic exercise for inoculating yourself against the fear of losing what never truly belonged to you in the first place. The practice is simple. Instead of dreading loss, you rehearse it, not to torment yourself, but to expose the hidden truth that your worth doesn't live in those numbers or notifications. Ancient Stoics would visualize losing homes, reputations, even loved ones, not as pessimism, but as liberation. By mentally surrendering what they clung to, they discovered an unshakable core. For modern pick-me energy, this is revolutionary, because every time you refresh your feed or obsess over a text left on read, you're operating from a delusion that your peace is held hostage by external validation. Negative visualization shatters that illusion. Try it now. Close your eyes and imagine waking to a social media cleanse, half your followers gone, comments silent. Notice the physical reaction, the heat in your chest, the urge to fix it. Now ask, what remains? Your hands still work, your mind still creates, the sky outside your window hasn't changed. Those followers were never the source of your creativity, they were just its witnesses. The mismatch you're grieving isn't really about them, it's about the story you attach to them. Dating apps turn this into a numbers game, but negative visualization flips the script. Imagine your most promising match vanishing overnight. No explanation, no closure. Sit with that emptiness until it stops feeling like a verdict and starts feeling like space. Space to rediscover what you actually enjoy about dating when it's not a performance. Space to notice how much energy you've wasted decoding mixed signals from strangers who owed you nothing. Here's the paradox: when you stop fearing abandonment, you stop broadcasting desperation. Think of the friend who's effortlessly magnetic in groups, not because they're the loudest, but because they're the least needy. They're not scanning the room for approval, they're already at home in themselves. That's negative visualization in action. They've already imagined walking out alone and realized it wouldn't kill them. Make this tangible. For 1 week, each morning, mentally delete something you rely on for validation. Picture your Instagram account deactivated, that crush never texting back, your coworkers forgetting your birthday. Then journal. If this happened, what would I still have? You'll start noticing a pattern. The things that survive these mental fires are your real foundations. your sense of humor, your ability to adapt, that novel draft only you know exists. The Stoics called this the premeditation of evils, but it's really the premeditation of invincibility. Because once you've walked through the worst-case scenario and realized you're still standing, pick-me energy loses its grip. You stop clinging to people like they're life rafts and start recognizing them as fellow swimmers. And that's when everything changes. The less you need them to choose you, the more freely you can choose yourself. Negative visualization isn't about preparing for loss, it's about waking up to what was always yours. The followers, the matches, the applause, their weather. Your self-sufficiency, that's the climate, and no storm can change the fact that you are built to outlast it. Marcus Aurelius once described life as a wrestling match, but not the kind where you win by pinning someone else down. In his vision, the real opponent isn't the other person. It's your own impulses, your desperate grabs for validation, your temptation to cheat your way into being chosen. Pick-me energy, that's the illegal move, the desperate heel hook, the cheap shot when the ref isn't looking. And here's the Stoic twist. In this match, the only way to win is by refusing to use those tactics, even when it feels like everyone else is. Think about a real wrestling match for a second. If you're busy glancing at the crowd, begging for cheers, you've already taken your eyes off the fight. That split-second distraction is all it takes for your opponent, your own insecurity, to flip you onto your back. The Stoics saw life the same way. Every time you contort yourself to fit someone else's expectations, you're not scoring points, you're forfeiting your stance. Marcus wrote in Meditations, "The best revenge is to not be like your enemy." In this context, that means the best way to win against approval-seeking is to stop playing its game altogether. Modern culture loves a good underdog story, the awkward kid who transforms to win the prom queen, the employee who becomes a yes-man to climb the ladder. But the Stoics would call these Pyrrhic victories. Sure, you might win the affection or the promotion, but at what cost? Your integrity isn't just a moral luxury, it's your center of gravity. Lose that, and no amount of external validation can keep you upright. Here's how this plays out in real time. Imagine two co-workers vying for a manager's attention. One laughs a little too hard at every joke, volunteers for every grind, morphs into whatever they think will get noticed. The other does their job with quiet excellence, speaks up when it matters, and stays rooted in their values. Who actually earns respect? The first might get short-term praise, but the second builds something unshakable, a reputation for reliability that doesn't hinge on mood or favor. That's the discipline of action, knowing that real victory isn't in being chosen, but in being consistent. Marcus' wrestling metaphor goes deeper. In ancient matches, there were strict rules against eye gouging, biting, or false surrenders. Athletes who broke them were disgraced, even if they won. The parallel is striking. Every time you suppress your truth to please someone, every time you trade authenticity for applause, you're not just bending the rules, you're undermining the entire point of the contest. Because life isn't about collecting trophies of approval, it's about honing a character that doesn't need them. Try this reframe. Next time you feel the pick-me urge, say, to laugh at an offensive joke or hide a quirky passion, picture Marcus' wrestling mat. Ask, is this move worthy of me? Not, will this get me liked, but does this align with the person I'm training to become? The discipline of action is about making choices that hold up under scrutiny, not the scrutiny of others, but your own. And here's the counterintuitive victory. When you stop wrestling for approval, you start attracting the right kind of attention. Not the fleeting cheers of a crowd, but the quiet respect of those who matter. Because integrity isn't flashy, but it's undeniable. It's the wrestler who wins clean, the artist who refuses to compromise, the friend who stays real even when it's inconvenient. That's the win Marcus was after, the kind that doesn't fade when the spotlight moves on. So step onto the mat with both feet. Let pick-me desperation tap out. The only victory that lasts is the one where you walk away knowing you fought like yourself, and no one else. Diogenes the Cynic, that ancient philosopher who famously lived in a barrel and told Alexander the Great to step out of his sunlight, carried a lantern through Athens in broad daylight, claiming to be searching for an honest man. But his real mission was far more radical. He was dismantling the very idea that belonging requires fitting in. When asked where he was from, he didn't name a city or tribe. He simply said, "I am a citizen of the world." In that moment, he wasn't just rejecting borders, he was exposing the absurdity of pick-me energy centuries before social media or high school cliques existed. Because if you're a citizen of the world, why beg for a seat at a table when you already own the whole restaurant? Cosmopolitanism. The Stoic belief that we're bound not by national or social tribes, but by shared humanity, is the ultimate antidote to petty status games. Think about the last time you felt that gnawing anxiety of being left out. Maybe it was a group chat you weren't added to, or an event where you didn't know the inside jokes. That discomfort comes from a tiny worldview, one that mistakes a single room for the entire universe. The Stoics zoomed out. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What doesn't benefit the hive doesn't benefit the bee." He wasn't talking about your friend group or workplace clique. He meant the hive of human existence. When you internalize that, rejection from a small circle stops feeling like exile and starts feeling like redirection. Here's how this plays out practically. Imagine two versions of you at a party. One scans the room, calculating who to impress to climb the social ladder, laughing too loud at the right people's jokes. The other moves through the space like a traveler in a foreign city, curious, open, but never needy. They're not there to collect validation, they're there to exchange it. That's cosmopolitanism in action. It's the difference between seeing people as stepping stones and seeing them as fellow citizens in a vast, interconnected polis. Modern tribalism thrives on manufactured scarcity, the idea that there's only so much attention, love, or success to go around, so you'd better fight for your share. Social media amplifies this, turning friendships into follow accounts and self-worth into a competitive sport. But cosmopolitanism rejects that economy. When the Stoics spoke of the cosmos, they meant an ordered universe where your value isn't relative, it's intrinsic. You don't have to be more liked than someone else to matter. You just have to be fully and unapologetically. History's great cosmopolitans lived this. Eleanor Roosevelt, who called herself a world citizen, didn't waste energy begging elite circles to accept her. She built schools in war zones and redefined what power looked like. Nikola Tesla, who saw nationality as irrelevant to genius, gave away patents that could have made him the richest man alive. They understood what Diogenes knew: clinging to small identities, popular, chosen, included, is like holding a thimble when you could dip your hands in the ocean. Try this reframe. Next time you feel the sting of exclusion, ask, is this group the only place I could belong? The answer is always no. The world is teeming with potential allies, collaborators, and kindred spirits. The coworker who overlooks you today might be replaced tomorrow by a mentor halfway across the globe. The dating app match who ghosts you frees you for a conversation with someone who speaks your soul's language. Cosmopolitanism isn't naivety, it's a strategic expansion of your horizons. Here's the secret pick-me energy misses. People obsessed with climbing social ladders are always looking down at who's beneath them, who's gaining on them. But when you see yourself as a citizen of the world, you look outward, and outward is where the real connections live, the ones that don't require you to shrink or perform. So let them keep their tiny kingdoms. You've got a whole world to explore. The Stoic reserve clause sounds simple. Just tack on fate permitting to your desires, but this tiny linguistic tweak is psychological alchemy. Imagine whispering to yourself before a first date, "They'll adore me if the universe aligns." That ellipsis holds the power to dissolve desperation. Because here's what pick-me energy gets backwards. It treats every interaction like a final exam where your worth is being graded, rather than a conversation where compatibility gets mutually discovered. The reserve clause reframes the entire game. This practice traces back to ancient Stoics like Epictetus, who advised adding, "If nothing prevents me," to every plan. At first glance, it might sound like defeatism, but dig deeper. It's actually radical ownership. By acknowledging that outcomes aren't entirely in your control, you paradoxically reclaim power over what is, your effort, your integrity, your ability to show up fully regardless of results. Think of an archer. She can control how carefully she draws the bow, how steadily she aims, but once the arrow flies, wind, gravity, and plain luck take over. The reserve clause is her mantra. "I'll hit the bullseye if conditions allow." That's not hedging, it's wisdom. Modern neuroscience confirms why this works. When we fixate on rigid outcomes, "they must like me," our brains treat potential rejection like a physical threat, triggering fight or flight responses. But when we add the reserve clause, we activate the prefrontal cortex, the region governing adaptability and reason. Suddenly, that unanswered text isn't a life or death verdict, it's data. Maybe they're busy, maybe you're not their type, maybe the timing's off. All options remain open because you haven't staked your worth on one narrow path. Try this linguistic experiment for 1 week. Append, fate permitting, to 3 daily desires. 1. My presentation will wow the team if the moment's right. 2. This friendship will deepen if our paths align. 3. The scale will show my goal weight if my body agrees. Notice the shift. You're not abandoning ambition, you're divorcing it from ultimatums. The artist who whispers, "This painting will find its audience," if it's meant to, works just as diligently, but without the creative paralysis of needing every stroke to guarantee approval. Here's where it gets transformative. The reserve clause isn't passive, it's participatory. Fate isn't some distant force, it's the sum of a million variables, including your actions. When you say, "If nothing prevents me," you're not shrugging in resignation, you're taking inventory. Have I done my part? Have I shown up authentically? If yes, the rest isn't yours to command. This philosophy shines in dating. The pick-me mindset obsesses over, "Why didn't they text back?" The Stoic response: "I was engaging and authentic, and if that wasn't enough for them, it wasn't meant to be." Brutal, maybe. Liberating, absolutely. Because when you stop interpreting indifference as failure, you start seeing it as redirection toward people who resonate with the real you. The genius of the reserve clause is its scalability. Apply it to social media. This post will go viral. If it serves those who see it, career jumps, I'll get the promotion. If it's the right next step, even parenting, my child will thrive within the unique ecosystem of their life. Each time, you're not lowering standards, you're expanding possibilities. Consider how nature operates. A tree doesn't demand that every seed become a forest. It releases them to the wind, trusting some will root. The reserve clause is that trust in action, an understanding that while you control the planting, the growing belongs to forces grander than your will. And in that surrender lies an unexpected gift, the freedom to strive without starving for guarantees. Because here's the secret pick-me energy fears. Needing an outcome too much makes you terrible company for others and for yourself. But when you can say, "I hope this works out, and if not, something better will," you radiate the kind of ease that attracts everything desperation repels. Not by magic, but by mathematics. The less you cling, the more space you leave for what's truly yours. Silence was Musonius Rufus' secret weapon, not the awkward kind, but the deliberate, unshakable quiet of someone who knows their worth doesn't need footnotes. Picture this: you send a carefully crafted text, then immediately panic and add 3 more messages explaining what you really meant. Or you're in a meeting, and the second there's silence after your idea, you rush to fill it with qualifiers. "But I'm open to other thoughts, maybe it's dumb." That's pick-me energy in its most subtle form, the compulsive need to over-clarify, over-justify, to make sure no one could possibly misunderstand or dislike you. But here's what Musonius understood. When you constantly explain yourself, you're not just sharing information, you're auctioning off your confidence to the highest bidder. The Stoic teacher drilled this into his students. Excessive speech is a sign of sickness, like a body leaking bile. Harsh, maybe, but think about the last time someone dumped a paragraph of apologies for a minor oversight, or a date who texted a novel after one delayed response. Didn't their desperation weaken your respect for them, even if just a little? That's the paradox of over-explaining. The more you try to control how others perceive you, the less authoritative you become. Musonius saw silence not as emptiness but as a container, one that holds your dignity intact. Consider two job candidates. One finishes their pitch and sits back, comfortable in the pause that follows. The other rushes to add, "But I'm totally flexible on salary and I can start yesterday, and I know I might not be the most experienced, but who would you trust with more responsibility?" Silence isn't just the absence of noise, it's the presence of self-possession. History's most influential figures mastered this. Rosa Parks didn't give a speech when she refused to move on that bus. Her silence was the argument. Steve Jobs famously paused for 10 full seconds during presentations, letting key points land like stones in water. These weren't power plays, they were demonstrations of a core Stoic truth. What you don't say speaks volumes. Now apply this to modern communication. That text thread where you're carrying the entire conversation. The Instagram caption edited into oblivion to sound clever yet casual. Every extra word dilutes your impact. Musonius would have loved the elegance of a well-placed period. Try this experiment for one day. Strip every message down to its essence. Instead of, "Hey, no pressure at all, but if you're free sometime, maybe we could grab coffee. Only if you want. Try Coffee Tuesday." Feel the shift. You're not being cold, you're respecting both their time and your own worth. Here's where silence becomes revolutionary. In a world where everyone's screaming for attention, the quietest person in the room often holds the most power. Not because they're aloof, but because they're selective. They understand that words are currency, and pick-me energy spends them recklessly. So next time you feel that itch to over-explain, to fill the void with nervous chatter, remember Musonius' lesson: the strongest walls aren't made of words. They're built with the stones you didn't throw away. Imagine holding a $100 bill in one hand and a crumpled receipt in the other. Now set them both on fire. Which loss would sting more? The answer seems obvious, but here's the Stoic twist. Neither inherently changes your worth. That's the radical lens of indifference to indifference, a philosophy that slices through pick-me energy like a scalpel. The Stoics didn't say money or praise were worthless. They called them preferred indifference, useful, sure, defining, never. And that distinction is what turns desperation into detachment. Let's break this down. Ancient Stoics categorized everything in life into two buckets: virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, things that define your character, and indifference, wealth, status, looks, things that don't. But even within indifference, there's a hierarchy. Some, like health or basic safety, are preferred because they make life smoother. Others, like fame or luxury, are dispreferred because they often backfire. External validation, firmly in the preferred indifferent zone. It's like seasoning nice when it's there, but you wouldn't base your entire meal around it. Modern life blurs this boundary. Social media turns likes into a pseudo-currency, and dating culture treats attention as oxygen. That's when pick-me behavior thrives, when we mistake indifference for essentials. Think of it like confusing a GPS for the actual road. The GPS validation might help navigate, but it's not the journey itself. Crush the device and you can still drive. Obsess over its voice and you might miss the scenery. Here's where the analogy gets practical. Money is the ultimate preferred indifferent. It's useful for paying rent or buying books, but no one rationally believes having more cash makes you better as a human. Yet with validation, we act as if it does. We'll bend our personalities, silence our opinions, or chase trends just to earn emotional likes from others. The Stoic fix: treat praise like paper currency, recognize its utility without letting it dictate your self-worth. History's luminaries embodied this. Einstein cared more about thought experiments than applause, often scribbling equations on napkins while ignoring adoring fans. Frida Kahlo painted her truth even when critics called it too raw. Their focus wasn't on being chosen, it was on choosing themselves daily, relentlessly. That's the power of indifference to indifference. It frees you to pursue what actually matters. Try this reframe. Next time you catch yourself craving a compliment or fretting over silence, ask, is this feedback helping me grow or just propping up my ego? If it's the former, absorb it like a scientist weighing data. If it's the latter, file it under nice but unnecessary. The goal isn't to become a stone statue, but to stop letting every breeze of opinion knock you off center. And here's the beautiful paradox: when you stop clutching preferred indifference like lifelines, they often flow toward you more freely. People respect those who don't beg for respect. Attention gravitates to those not starving for it. Like Epictetus said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Swap wealth for confidence, and the math holds. Your emotional richness multiplies when you stop counting other people's coins. So carry validation lightly. Spend it when it serves you, save it for rainy days, but never mortgage your soul to earn it. Because the moment you classify applause as preferred indifferent, you reclaim the only currency that never depreciates: your unwavering sense of self. So here we stand, 25 Stoic tools in hand, each one chiseling away at the desperate need to be chosen, to be seen, to be validated. Like a sculptor working on marble, we've chipped away at the pick-me habits layer by layer, from focusing only on what we control, to embracing obstacles as fuel, to seeing ourselves as citizens of the world rather than beggars at someone else's door. These philosophies aren't just ideas, they're wrecking balls for the fragile cages we've built around our self-worth. Think back to where we started, that frantic energy, the constant recalibrating of yourself to fit someone else's mold. Now picture who you become when you apply even a handful of these principles. No more rehearsing texts to sound funnier, no more editing your opinions to avoid ruffling feathers, no more treating silence like a threat. Instead, you stand firm, not because you're immune to judgment, but because you've measured your worth by your own yardstick. That's the transformation Stoicism offers: not a life free from rejection, but one where rejection loses its power to derail you. Here's your final challenge, straight from the Stoic playbook. For the next 7 days, act as if you're already validated. Not in a performative, look-at-me way, but with the quiet certainty of someone who knows their value isn't up for debate. Speak your mind without disclaimers. Wear what makes you feel alive, not what you think will earn compliments. Say no when you mean it, and yes without ulterior motives. Notice how the world doesn't collapse, how, in fact, it starts to adjust to you. People will lean in closer when you're not straining to be heard. Opportunities will feel different when you're not auditioning for them. And when you stumble because you will, don't mistake it for failure. The Stoics didn't preach perfection, they practiced persistence. Every time you bite back an apology for existing, every time you resist the itch to people please, you're reinforcing a new neural pathway. One that says, I don't need permission to take up space. Now over to you. The comments are your agora, a modern-day Stoic forum. Share your victories, big or small. Did you catch yourself mid-pick-me and pivot? Did you walk away from a situation that would have once left you begging for crumbs? Those moments matter. Because the real testament to these philosophies isn't in understanding them, it's in living them. So go ahead. Act as if you're already enough, because here's the secret: you always were. The world's just been slow to catch up.